Good evening, ladies and gentlemen. Welcome to the City Council meeting of December 7th, 2015. I'll call the meeting to order. We have no announcements tonight other than the Bellingham City Council meets all requirements of the State of Washington's Open Meeting Act. Please join me in the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Roll call.
Terry Borneman.
Here.
Dan Hamill.
Here.
Gene Knutson.
Here.
Michael Lillequist.
Here.
Roxanne Murphy.
Here.
Pinky Vargas.
Here.
Jack Weiss.
Here. Okay, we'll now go to our 15-minute public comment period, and we will start out with Bob Marshall. And the clock, you'll see the clock on top of Elizabeth's desk, and you'll be able to keep track when your time's up. Go ahead, Bob.
Members of Council, thank you for the opportunity to put these remarks on paid, sick, and safe leave into the record. It is my understanding that Council proposes to recommend to the state legislature that it pass statewide legislation along these lines rather than pass an ordinance covering employees in Bellingham. I have never used these remarks to characterize or question Council members' motives before. But in my view, this proposal is not simply a matter of kicking the can down the road or studying a problem to death, but much worse, and craven. This proposal is entirely disingenuous. It is not even political card counting. The only people who oppose this ordinance are small business owners, by no means all of them, and who might, after all, be accommodated in a local ordinance, but they will never effectively support re-election of anyone on this council. These people who oppose this ordinance have already opposed all of you as much as they could. Not one of them is going to pull you under the mistletoe for killing this ordinance. Here, the right thing to do is the right thing to do. Anyone who has the least understanding of politics knows that to recommend to a higher body, the only thing that will move them is a successful ordinance. To tell the state legislature what its business is like responding to a personal invitation by saying, "Gosh, I'll be sure and try to make it." Anyone in the State House, and no doubt there are supporters of paid sick and safe leave there, is bound to think if this idea can't get support in Bellingham, where Republicans don't even run for office, I guess only Seattle socialists really want it. So either you support this idea for Bellingham workers, or you don't. But you don't get to hide behind the State House. Thank you for your attention.
Thank you, Bob. Kathleen Osted. Followed by Betsy Pernado. Followed by Larry Hildes.
Hello, Council. My name is Kathleen Osted. I'm speaking on behalf of the Healthy Bellingham Coalition. I believe you have the letter that we wrote to you on your desk. Right here, I'm delivering you 639 signed postcards, and these are signed by community members that we've collected over the course of the few months who believe that paid sick and safe leave should be here in Bellingham. So I'm just going to read the letter to everybody. The Healthy Bellingham Coalition is presenting to you over 600 signed postcards from Bellingham community members who believe paid sick and safe leave should be a legal right for all workers. The people who sign these postcards are your neighbors, the people who provide your services, and most importantly, the community members that you've committed to serve and protect. The fact that only 44% of Bellingham workers earn paid sick and safe leave is a public health and a public safety issue. This urgent issue needs to be implemented immediately, and you should not wait for a larger government entity such as the state or federal government to act. We trust that you will be leaders and help Bellingham become an even more healthy and vibrant community to live in. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Kathleen. Betsy Pernado, Larry Hildes, and Lane Ankler.
Good evening, Council. Thanks for the opportunity to speak. My name is Betsy Pernado, and I'm speaking as one of the co-chairs of Jobs with Justice. And I'd like to first start off by publicly recognizing Roxanne Murphy for the leadership role she has taken on a number of issues around workers' rights in the past year. Roxanne came out to support workers last Black Friday, not this year, but last year when we had a large action in Bellingham, stood up to those workers and was one of the few state elected officials that spoke in support of those workers. She came out a number of times to support organizing workers at the hospital, and most recently she has sponsored an ordinance to provide paid sick leave, paid sick and safe leave for workers in Bellingham. And I want to thank you, Roxanne, for your leadership. I also want to thank the council. I think that the resolution that you crafted was a very good resolution, and I'm glad that you recognize that paid sick and safe leave is a very important thing for workers. But I would like to add that we elect you to make decisions. We don't elect you to make resolutions to send to the state. And I think you know that this is a very dysfunctional state legislature. The House passed paid sick leave last year, but it could not get past the Senate, and there are really no reasons to think that that will happen this year. So, in effect, you're consigning this to just a dead end. You're punting, and it has very little chance of going anywhere. And I'd like to also say I'm very disappointed because I feel like at the listening session there were a large number of people that spoke in favor of paid sick leave, and even some of the businesses that came and spoke did not speak against paid sick leave. They said they offered paid sick leave, but they did not like the idea of government regulation. And that's nothing new. That's the main reason I think businesses oppose all kinds of things. They don't want to be regulated. But the fact remains that an estimated 21,000 workers in Bellingham don't have paid sick leave. They will continue to go to work sick. They will continue to send their children to daycare sick. And they will continue to create public health problems in Bellingham. So yes, send the resolution, but please don't give up on passing paid sick leave in Bellingham. Thank you.
Thank you, Betsy. Larry Hildes, Blaine Ankler, and Abe Jacobson.
Thank you, members of the council. Want to echo and adopt the statements of previous speakers. I think we frankly expected better from you all. We got it from some of you. We certainly got it from Roxanne. This is not an issue that's intended to be dumped on the legislature so it can sit there until there's a majority that will actually pass something some years down the road. What you essentially did is you let Tony Larson and his handful of teabaggers hold the health and safety of the city hostage for their own narrow ideological gain. This was a decent resolution. It was an appropriate resolution. It was a humane resolution. It's something that frankly should have happened years ago. And to let the Tea Party and a group of business owners whose business strategy is apparently cutting corners by not paying people when they're sick as a business plan for success dictate what you do with the community's trust is really sad. We can do better. You can do better than this. This was not an issue we brought to you so that you could dump it on the legislature. This is an issue we brought to you so you could make Bellingham, again, an example of positive, progressive change to take care of the people in this community who get sick. Businesses don't get sick. People get sick. Businesses don't need time off from work. People do. Businesses get regulated. If they don't like being regulated, they shouldn't be in business. And to hold the community hostage and threaten to pull out because they might actually have to pay their sick workers to stay home is outrageous. You can do better than this. We expect better than this. Nobody ran against any of you. The right wing can't mount a campaign. They certainly shouldn't sabotage appropriate health legislation. Please go back and look at this again. Revisit this issue. We're counting on you to do the right thing, not to pass the buck. Thank you.
Thank you, Larry.
Re-election was not any of our issue.
Blaine
Wasn't
Ankler. Onliker.
Yeah,
Sorry about
Blaine
that.
Onliker.
Okay, go ahead, Blaine.
I'm a member of the Healthy Bellingham Coalition, so I'm going to echo comments of my coalition members. I'm also an organizer with SEIU 1199 Northwest. We represent hospital workers at Peace Health St. Joseph's here in town, and I'm also a local resident. And I want to thank you for the opportunity to come and share comments tonight. I want to echo Betsy's applause for Roxanne Murphy for leading on this important issue for workers and their families. And I also want to agree with previous comments that this is a dysfunctional legislature right now in our state, and that it is unlikely that in the coming years this issue is going to be handled at the statewide level. And again, to echo comments of coalition members, we shouldn't let the perfect be the enemy of the good. And there's working people here, a large number of working people here in our community that need this ordinance now. There's people that are going to work sick, it's a public health issue, or they're choosing to stay home and miss out on income that they need and risking potential missing of their rent or being evicted from their homes. This is an important issue for a large portion of our community. So I'd like to call on you again to do the right thing and relook at this issue. I really support the fact that you're calling on our state legislature to do something, but at the same time, we need to be doing something here locally. Again, don't put the perfect in the way of the good. Thanks.
Thank you, sir. Abe Jacobson, Catherine Chambers, and Clarence Holmes.
Good evening. I'm Abe Jacobson, and I live at 2314 Samish Way. First of all, many thanks to Councilmember Roxanne Murphy for her hard work and courage in something that did not get her kudos from everybody in the community, but certainly I appreciate it, and thank you very, very much. I gather that the council is going to defeat the motion that we want and is going to remand this to the state government. Please don't even bother. That's a placebo that will not be appreciated by the patient. It will not fool anybody. It will probably irritate people more. Don't bother. Just kill it. It's very good that the things that we take for granted, like overtime pay requirement, the 40-hour work week, the weekend, Social Security, workman's comp, unemployment insurance, all of which were impositions on business that were bitterly, bitterly opposed by American business in the halls of the legislatures. That the Congress passed these things in the 1930s, and they did it with threats and calumny from the business community, but they did not do the easy thing, which would be to say, well, why don't you go for a constitutional amendment or kick it up a venue like that? No, they did it. And I'm asking you to just, if you want to reject this thing, just state your reasons why you think it's a good idea, that you agree with Tony Larson that people should not have health care, should not have paid sick leave. Just state your reasons. Don't administer the placebo. Everybody's going to see through the placebo. Don't bother.
Catherine Chambers, Clarence Holmes, and Brooks Anderson.
Good evening, Council. Catherine Chambers, Bellingham. So as chair of the Whatcom County Democrats, our party endorsed this issue recently for paid and protected sick leave. We endorsed it as an ordinance. I'm disappointed that the council decided to push this forward in terms of a resolution, not an ordinance. And I see in here that there's at least 5 ordinances that are considered in here tonight, which aren't anywhere near as in, they're not important, but they don't impact people in the same way as this ordinance would impact people. So the ordinance resolution's nice. It says all the great things. It supports everything about having paid and protected sick leave. And again, sending it to the legislature just isn't going to do any good. What does a good thing, or what really works, is when ordinances are passed in small cities and municipalities, because that shows support to the state. Just like in the federal government, as we passed marriage equality state by state, the federal government then took it on and passed it. and okayed it. So that shows support at the state level. And public policy matters. And the reason it matters, I'm going to talk about my situation. I was in a job and I got sick pay and I had sick leave, but I got sick and I needed extended time, and FMLA, Family Medical Leave Act, didn't cover me. That policy did not cover me. So I had to leave my employment at a really creating a lot of financial loss for me over the last 6 months. That's why policy matters, because people aren't, you know, if you don't have to be covered for something, businesses aren't going to cover you. So I urge you to take this forth in an ordinance form, because it's a public health issue, it's a moral issue, and it's a justice issue for those people in our community that aren't covered by sick pay. Thank you.
Thank you. Clarence Holmes, Brooks Anderson. Wendy, did you want to speak? You'll be after Brooks. Go ahead, Clarence.
Hello, I'm Clarence. All of us up here, we're employees at St. Joseph Hospital. We're healthcare workers. We take care of our community, and all of us support paid safe and sick leave up in Bellingham. We know that when people have to choose between making rent and staying home from work because they're sick, people go to work sick, and that's how illnesses spread. And these are most of the workers who are the most vulnerable. They're working in restaurants, they're food service workers, they're caretakers, home caretakers. Most of these people don't have the sick leave that they need. And that's how illnesses spread. People who don't stay home from work, they're sick longer, and they get sicker, and they have to go to the hospital, and that's why we need paid sick leave. As workers at the hospital, we have paid sick leave. We know how important it is. We use it because obviously we don't want their patients to get sick. And we need that for not just healthcare workers. We're not unique in that all workers in Bellingham need safe and sick leave. And as healthcare professionals, we're fully supporting safe and sick leave in Bellingham. And we all need to do the right thing here. It's not going to be easy, but we have to do it because it's the right thing. Thanks.
Thank you. Thank you. Brooks Anderson and Wendy Harris.
Brooks Anderson, I live in Whatcom County. Thank you for letting us talk to you. I actually am not going to talk about what seems to be the big subject tonight, about the sick leave. I'm actually about one of the other ordinances that I was in attendance at your committee meeting this afternoon. And I know you all got my letter that I wrote about that ordinance, about it removing it from North Donovan for the incentive, for the tax incentives. And I guess what I really want to say, because I know you've read my letter and letters from other people in the community, and you've done a lot of work yourselves, is that I really see this process as a process that has worked. While I understand people are really frustrated about the sick leave and that this ordinance is probably not of that magnitude, but what I saw was when the last city council meeting, someone who didn't know anything about this ordinance, none of us did actually, the notice was kind of confused, complicated, spoke up. Then one of you said, let's pause, let's just step back and give people a chance to learn about this and respond to this. I think that really showed a respect for the neighborhood and the community, and we did go and talk to the planning department, which you actually, Rick suggested that I do that when I went to the MNAC meeting and got referred to David Stahlheim and then got referred to Taras Lundin. And it really was a process. While it took a lot of time and hours, it was a process that worked because then people did know what was going on. You did then take another look and ask, I'm guessing you asked yourself questions about why the people in that neighborhood felt as strongly as they did about removing the incentive, the tax incentive ordinance from that, just from North Donovan, that it didn't seem appropriate. So I want to, say that I really appreciate that process and know that it takes a lot of a lot of community time and personal time, and I know it makes it more difficult for you when you have to listen to all of us, but it is the process that at the bottom line gets a better result. So that's really what I wanted to say about this ordinance, because I was in the committee meeting. I'm hoping that what I heard in that committee meeting is what your vote is tonight, but again, I appreciate you really taking the time and stepping back and giving us a chance to participate in the process. Thank you.
Thank you, Brooks. Wendy Harris.
Wendy Harris. I'm here to speak about the critical area ordinance, and I'm requesting that you not send it forward, that you not approve it tonight, the ordinance, that instead you send it back to staff because it needs more work. And in particular, I'm really concerned about a couple of compliance issues, one of which I think is really fatal. The purpose of the ordinance is to protect our critical areas against a net loss of function. In order to determine whether we're doing that, we need some sort of inventory and measurement and a baseline standard, because without knowing what we're starting from, we have no way of knowing if new development is impacting the existing functional status. And there are a number of different ways you can go about measuring the function, but first you have to do an inventory and an analysis, and the city hasn't done that specifically as it pertains to wildlife. It's done no field assessment, and that doesn't apply to fish. We do a pretty good job of fish projects, but imagine doing a fish project where you actually design the restoration and complete it without ever going out and looking at the fish in the stream, either before you do the project or after. That's essentially what we're doing with every other form of wildlife, and it doesn't work. The other thing that's a big problem that really needs to be addressed, because it's long-standing, is the problem of habitat corridors. There is a specific provision in the GMA that requires habitat corridors be identified, and the city hasn't done it. Now, it cited a draft master restoration plan. I've looked at that plan, had a hard copy of it. It doesn't identify habitat corridors. Habitat is only valuable in terms of its connectivity, and that's why you need these corridors, so that you have a sense of connectivity and animals can move. And we're just lucky that, nobody's challenged the city on that, because I don't think it could withstand a legal challenge. There's also some other issues that I think are a problem. There are some provisions in this ordinance that don't comply with best available science. I know that I had spoken with Councilmember Lillquist after the committee meeting about small wetlands. There was a federal, an EPA study that came out this year that showed that small unconnected wetlands in some cases can have greater functional value than these large centralized wetlands and streams. And that's very significant, because right now the city's critical area ordinance has a lower standard of protection for for small wetlands, unconnected wetlands, and in fact, while the staff was talking, they continually referred to low-function wetlands. The other big issue is outdoor recreation. We treat this as if it has no impact, and it's extremely high impact. So this is very serious. This is our future, so please give it the time and the attention that it deserves. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Thanks to everybody for your comments tonight. We will now go to our first committee meeting, Public Works, Public Safety, chaired by Terry Borner.
Thank you, Gene. We had two items before the committee today. The first was an ordinance of the City of Bellingham adopting a transportation impact fee-based rate and rate schedule for 2016. The transportation impact fee-based rate for each PM peak hour vehicle trip is adjusted each year according to the actual cost of construction and the program cost of capital improvements needed to accommodate new growth and development in the annual 6-year Transportation Improvement Program, the TIP. The 2016 TIF base rate represents an increase from the 2015 TIF, and the amendment to the TIF schedule is necessary to help recover the proposal shared cost of transportation infrastructure to accommodate new growth and development in Bellingham. Staff recommends approval of the attached ordinance adopting the base rate of $2,017 for 2016 and revising the TIF rate schedule accordingly as Table 19.06.040A. The committee recommended approval, and I so move.
Second.
Motion been made and seconded. Is there any discussion? All those in favor will say aye.
Aye.
All those opposed, motion carries unanimously.
Okay. The second item was a bid award for water treatment plant pretreatment project, hydrochloride system equipment, bid number 52B-2015. The water treatment plant pretreatment project is currently in the design phase at approximately 60%. Included in the scope is a hydrochloride generation system which has been procured early to facilitate the design process. The bids for this equipment were opened and publicly read on October 27, 2015. The lowest responsive and responsible bid was submitted by Denera in the sum of $573,188, which included full life cycle costs for the equipment. The resulting bid award is for the capital cost component of the total, which is $267,000. The engineer's estimate was $320,000 for capital cost only. You know, there was something different with this bid. They not only bid the product out, but the life cycle of that, and asked for that in the bid, which was a new process for the department, and something I think was pretty thoughtful. The committee recommended approval, and I so move.
Second.
Motion been made and seconded. Did you get that, Elizabeth? Well, you're good. You're better than I am. Okay, motion been made and seconded. Any discussion? All those in favor will say aye. Aye. All those opposed, motion carries 7-0.
End of committee
Thank you,
reports.
Terry. We now go to the Planning Committee, chaired by Jack Weiss.
Thank you, Jane. This morning we had two different agenda items. The first was a request from the Bellingham School District to amend the Bellingham Comprehensive Plan to incorporate by reference the district's new 2015 to 2021 Capital Facilities Plan. On November 16th, we had a public hearing to discuss this Capital Facilities Plan that the school district had provided to the city. And today was for a work session to talk about the specifics of that. We were informed by our legal counsel that our discussion and actually our vote was limited to the impact fee aspect of it alone, and that other planning issues associated with the comp plan or the capital facilities plan wasn't really part of our overall discussion. We did talk a little bit, though, about the urban village issues and the way that the city has been focusing its attention to infill within the urban villages, particularly the waterfront, Old Town, and the waterfront, Old Town, and the downtown area, and where specific schools might be located associated with all of that additional growth. And but overall, we didn't have as a committee any major issue about the impact fees themselves, and we ended up recommending approval unanimously, and I so move.
Second.
Motion been made and seconded. Any discussion? Michael.
I'm going to be voting no. I think assessing impact fees for schools is quite appropriate. But if you recall the history of this, the school district forgot to kind of turn this in on time. We had to rush docket it and rush it and get it through. We have to pass it this month or the impact fees aren't paid. But I think it was a rushed process. In particular, we were told now is not the time and place to challenge the planning assumptions, but the time and place for challenging those planning assumptions never actually occurred. And I think there are some debatable assumptions about school size and location requirements, debatable questions on the dependence on busing in the school district's plan. And the school district says it doesn't really matter because they're not planning on building any new schools in the next few years. I still don't think that's a great reason to pass this. This becomes part of a comprehensive plan, but we're told whether it's consistent with a comprehensive plan isn't one of our decision criteria. That bothers me. I think there could have been a better plan, and even though I support the idea of impact fees for schools, I don't think I can support this document tonight.
Okay, any further discussion? All those in favor will say aye. Aye. All those opposed?
No.
Motion carries 6-1. Councilmember Lillquist opposed.
The second item was the consideration of the city's proposed update to its critical areas ordinance, which is Bellingham Municipal Code 16.55. We had a public hearing a month ago on November 9th, and again, today was for a work session to talk about the specifics about what the proposed changes to the critical areas ordinance were as they were being proposed. We had an extensive presentation by staff on a few different items, particularly the as it pertained to the baseline issue that was previously mentioned in public comment. We had been provided with a number of different examples, such as the restoration assessment that has been recently completed, that provided information about 4 different habitats. We had a north wetland inventory and a wetland rating system provided as additional backup information about the baseline information that would be considered as part of any sort of development project. And lastly, there was a private study that was entitled the Whatcom County Amphibian Monitoring Program. And these combined provided the staff's representation of what they believe that they could work with for baseline. Whether or not that actually is enough, I think that will probably come out during the course of implementation of these new updates to the critical areas ordinance, and we may end up seeing some further changes in the future. The committee discussed the other aspects of the ordinance and the proposed changes. There were 2 small items that were being asked to be considered. One had to do with essential public facilities. There's language in there that continues to have San Juan Boulevard listed as public facility, essential public facilities. That, in fact, has been something that the council has previously acted upon, and we've wanted to go and defund and de-emphasize the construction of that street extension. And the other one was just simply a definitional issue associated with Cordata Park and whether or not that was part of essential public facilities as well. Primarily because we have, at this point, sort of like 2 different Cordata Parks. We have one off of Horton and another one off of Cordata Parkway, and we wanted just clarification about that. So the direction that the committee provided was to ask for an ordinance to be prepared associated with those changes and the base changes that was presented to us during the public hearing. We voted unanimously to ask the staff to present that to the council at a future meeting for first and second reading. So I don't think that's really a motion on our end, but we ended up voting to provide direction to staff on that. So with that, unless there's any other questions from the council or the committee, I think there is before I say into the committee.
Michael.
Sorry, I have a question on the critical areas ordinance. So to take an example, Ms. Harris mentioned there's a study came out by the EPA. It's a 400-page document. I only read to page 85, but it did state quite clearly that there was substantial evidence that small wetlands can be of very high value in certain situations when they're connected functionally with other bodies nearby. Even though they're physically separated, they're functionally connected. That's the sort of best available science I would like to know how gets incorporated into our critical areas ordinance. If there are Do we basically wait now for Department of Ecology or someone to tell us what best available science is? And if someone like the EPA, who's quite authoritative, they reviewed, I think, over 1,500 scientifically, peer-reviewed articles before they came to these conclusions, how does that get involved, and how does our critical areas ordinance reflect best available science?
Well, I think you summated the process quite well. Every day, every week, there are additional parts of the environmental record that are created. New studies are promulgated, new results are obtained. Those are considered by the state regulatory agency, the Department of Ecology. The Department of Ecology develops model ordinances, and through legislative action, those are required to be adopted by the cities, states, and other jurisdictions that plan under GMA or with critical area requirements. Department of Ecology is very aware of that EPA study. The same Department of Ecology that reviewed this draft ordinance and found us in complete compliance. In essence, we can't just keep stopping our process every time a new study is promulgated. We do have a process statewide that considers the study, decides which portion should be integrated and what strategy should be used, and promulgates it for implementation at the city and state level. We wait for that to occur. It would be premature for us now to act solely on that, and perhaps why not on another study? Why not a conflicting study? Are we to opine what the best science should be when we have state agencies that provide guidance for us specific to that matter with overview of the ordinance we're considering? So my sense is we are aware of it, they are aware of it. When it is codified, when an approach is promulgated, we'll be the first ones to bring it forward, as we have done for the last 15 years. With every successive update. Every change that goes through and is vetted, we find a way of bringing that forward for your consideration so that we can keep our ordinance leading edge and as current as any in the state.
Okay. I guess I'm still concerned about the timeliness of the life cycle. You say we're leading edge, but it seems to me we're always a couple years behind, even if we're leading edge by that definition.
I think this is the nature of research and implementation. And while there is great merit, now I don't dispute the EPA study finding good things that certainly have an effect, we need to find how we can integrate it into the regulatory fabric. We just can't insert it blindly and say, we won't do anything till we sort out all these other issues. Because the time we do that, another study will arise, and we'll just wait for that one to be ruminated on and determine how to proceed. We do work incrementally, and that's unfortunate. And sometimes we do have decisions and materials come to us that we believe to be true. But even the scientific method says once you find it, you consider it, you evaluate alternatives, and then you implement the results when you come to a clear conclusion. And I think it has to be viewed in the context of other environmental regulations as tempered by law.
Okay, thank you, Rick.
So
I don't want, go ahead.
One last item about this. I forgot to mention that the staff, as part of their presentation, they also presented an example of how the CAO ordinance has been working and they used the one example of the new Costco site that has been, it's under development right now, in which 3.2 acres worth of wetlands on the site now are being destroyed, but as a mitigation to that, there's 12 acres worth of wetlands to the north that are being renovated in such a way where those wetland areas are being completely rebuilt and will be functioning in a much better way than the existing wetlands that were destroyed that were in maybe more of a degraded condition, or were in pocket wetlands that were not as didn't have the ability to be as connected. And through the other examples, through the other improvements, that it's not only better habitat, but it's also better connectivity within that habitat. So,
okay.
With that, end of committee.
Okay, thank you, Jack. Thank you, Rick. We now go to Lake Whatcom Reservoir and Natural Resources.
Thank you, Gene. We had one item before us today, and that was the consideration to continue an interlocal agreement between the City of Bellingham and Western Washington University for the Lake Whatcom Monitoring Project. This monitoring program was initiated by the city and Western Washington University back in the 80s to measure and track long-term lake data for temperature, pH, dissolved oxygen, conductivity, turbidity, nutrients, including oxygen and phosphorus. The interlocal agreement continues for 3 years with a total value of $904,973, and this funding for the work was included in the 2016 budget. The committee recommended approval, and I so move.
Second.
Motion been made and seconded. Any discussion? All those in favor will say aye. Aye. All those opposed, motion carries 7-0. Thank you, Dan. We'll now go to Finance and Personnel, chaired by Pinky Vargas.
Thank you, Gene. We had one item in front of us today, the 2015 Emergency Management Performance Grant Award. It's a federal grant funds that are awarded to emergency management programs to assist in preparing for all hazards through sustainment and enhancement of existing programs. We had a small presentation today from Paul Gadzik, our emergency coordinator, and he gave us an overview of all the implementation that is happening with the grant dollars, and the committee unanimously voted to approve, and I so move.
Second.
Motion been made and seconded. Any discussion? All those in favor will say aye. Aye. All those opposed, motion carries 7-0. We go now to Community Economic Development, chaired by Michael Lillquist.
Thank you, Gene. Our committee had 3 items before us today. The first one had to do with a special tax valuation, adding additional eligible property class. This is a proposed amendment to the Bellingham Municipal Code, Section 1790, which will encourage private sector investment in and rehabilitation of Bellingham's historic buildings by expanding the eligible class of properties for the state's special tax valuation program to include, in addition to the current properties listed on the Bellingham Local Historic Register, also including properties listed in the National Register of Historic Places and those properties certified as contributing to a National Historic District or certified as contributing to a local historic district. Staff presented this afternoon. Basically, to be a qualified project, you have to be not only a recognized historical building, but the improvements, the renovations have to be at least 25% of the total value of the building, and those improvements must be maintained for 10 years and also approved by our Historic Preservation Commission. If you do all that, you will actually get a reduction in the valuation of your property. In other words, rather than your property going up in value, it stays low, your taxes stay low, and even though you've made improvements to the historic building and preserved it, your taxes go down. This afternoon, the committee voted unanimously to approve this ordinance, and I so move.
Second.
Motion been made and seconded. Any discussion? All those in favor will say aye. Aye. All those opposed, motion carries 7-0.
Okay, Gene, thank you. The second item was an information-only housing levy fund status report. Approved by voters in 2012, the housing levy is also referred to as the Home Fund, is a voter-approved 7-year property tax levy lift that brings in $3 million annually, or $21 million total over 7 years. We provided with an overview of that program, some highlights. About 2/3 of the money is being spent on production and preservation of affordable housing for low-income people. Right now, we have committed funds, around $9.5 million of that, which means there's only about $4 million left in the lifetime of the fund. But as Mr. Stahlheim indicated, we actually have about $4 million worth of projects kind of like next on deck. And so it looks like, even though we're less than halfway into the program, we've already pretty much found and committed to most of the programs that we could fund, which is great because our 7-year goal was 417 housing units produced or preserved. We've already done 510, and there's already, of which, or 510 are contracted, 226 developed. I think basically we're going to double or triple our goal, and probably going to achieve that ahead of time. In addition, there's a rental assistance supportive program. That's pretty similar. We've actually are out producing by a factor of 2 the amount of people being actually served, and we actually have committed the majority of the money either currently or in long-term programs for the lifetime of the loan. So it's kind of interesting. I mean, this program was just started recently. It's already hitting or exceeding its targets, and we've already, dispersed that money or identified recipients early on in the program. So we're working our way out of a job on this one. So I think it's really good news. That was information only. The last one was consideration of amendments to the Bellingham Municipal Code, Section 17.82, regarding the multifamily tax exemption. This is an overlay such that if you're building multi-units that have permanently affordable housing in them for low-income people, you can actually receive a tax break on that portion of your property that is affordable housing. This was actually came before us 2 weeks ago and referred to committee to work at a particular issue. There was an issue that's identified and amendments were made in committee this afternoon, and we have copies of the changes. There were basically 2 amendments made. There's a revised map for how it applies to Fairhaven, such that now Exhibit D only shows the core of Fairhaven, is where the eligible properties can be located. And the draft ordinance had that taking effect in 6 months' time, with the other area which was in dispute removed. We've also removed the delay so that this tax exemption for affordable housing would take effect immediately for any available projects. With those amendments, the committee voted unanimously this afternoon to recommend approval of the ordinance, and I so move. Oh, Mr. Rufato, do I need to read this entirely? Okay.
Yeah, I can do that if that's okay. So, Peter Rufato, City Attorney, you already mentioned this in substance, specifically on page 118 of the packet, as compared to now what you're voting on. What's been deleted from page 118 are lines 1 and 2. The effective date of the Fairhaven Urban Village being a targeted area is June 30th, 2016. That's deleted.
Okay. So I move that ordinance as amended.
Thank you. Is there a second?
Second?
Motion been made and seconded. Any discussion? Seeing none? Seeing none? No. I'm just kidding. Go ahead.
Hi, my name's Nunn.
I Nunn. Jack Nunn. Go ahead.
I'm strongly opposed to this amendment about removing the RT2. It's not enough for me to go and vote against the entire exemption, because I think that it's the tool that is really important. I think it's very short-sighted by the neighborhood to not see the value of it. It's almost to the point of it's like a gated community syndrome problem that I think that is happening right now, and there really is no reason to have that area removed. It provides complexity to the overall ordinance in the way that the staff can go and implement it, to all of the other areas that something like this would be attached to. But again, it's a very minor issue. It's just it's really unfortunate that there's that type of short-sightedness associated with this, and I really hope that in the future that we don't go and look at amendments like this based on just a vocal minority like this to a specific issue to try and I don't know. To me, it seems like it's homogenizing the neighborhood instead of providing the diversity that's necessary.
Okay. Seeing none, all those in favor of the motion will say aye.
Aye.
Aye. All those opposed? Motion carries 7-0. We will now go to the Committee of the Whole. We had several items. The first item is adoption of the 2015-2016 mid-biennial budget modification ordinance. An ordinance amending the 2015-2016 biennial budget, providing for adoption of the mid-biennium adjustments to the biennial budget pursuant to the terms of RCW 35.34.130. Committee recommends approval, and I so move.
Second.
Motion been made and seconded. Any discussion? All those in favor will say aye. Aye. All opposed, motion carries 7-0. The next is a town gown initiative. The Planning Community Development Department, in close coordination with the Police Department and Campus Community Coalition, are currently researching the use of a coordinated approach associated with off-campus housing and behaviors. Programs of this type are being successfully implemented in many college communities that are facing similar issues to those found in Bellingham: noise, litter, parking, traffic, and illegal units. Initial research indicates that a coordinated approach may be effectively addresses these behaviors than incremental enforcement. This afternoon we heard from Rick Sepler, and followed by a team of people, one from the Campus Coalition, from the Police Department. And the Town Gown Initiative is short for Town Cap and Gown. It sounds like a very exciting program. One town in Colorado has reduced their complaints by 80%. If we even get half of that or more than half of that, that's going to be wonderful. So I'm really looking forward to seeing this come forward when the time comes. It was a great report, and hopefully this will be, along with rental registration, will help out a lot with our college situation. Okay, the next item is a annexation agreement between Whatcom County Fire District 4. In preparation for East Bakerview, Mount Baker Highway annexation, the city has developed an agreement with the Whatcom County Fire District 4 to ensure an orderly transition of fire services for the annexed area. The key terms of this agreement will include the city paying $35,000 in tax revenue for District 4 for 3 years in exchange for certain automatic aid and continued use of District 4's training facility. It's up to $35,000 per year for 3 years, a maximum of $105,000. Committee recommends approval, and I so move.
Second.
Motion been made and seconded. Any discussion? All those in favor will say aye.
Aye.
All those opposed? Motion carries unanimously. The next, we had a report from Brian Heinrich, the mayor, and Peter Rifato on updated on jail-related concerns. The, let's see, I got it right here. Staff presented an update on ongoing discussions regarding current and future use of the Whatcom County Jail, jail alternative programs, and other potential diversion programs and practices, and the potential use of another jail facility for Bellingham misdemeanor and gross misdemeanor offenders. We heard from Mayor Linville, we heard from Brian Heinrich, and we heard from Peter Rifato, and this will be coming back to us on December 14th for hopefully a possible extension of our jail use agreement until June. So we'll be waiting to hear more on that. The next is an ordinance amending Bellingham Municipal Code, Section 2.56.0.60 and 3.16.040 regarding the duties of the hearing examiner. And what we decided on was having the hearing examiner, go ahead, repeat it. I didn't write the whole thing down.
Yeah, so the change would be from 2 presentations and 2 written reports a year to 1 presentation and 1 written report as the default, but then the opportunity to request additional reports and presentations as needed. And then the second component was making it clear that an attorney in the legal department would be providing legal advice to the Civil Service Commission instead of the hearing examiner.
Okay, thank you, Peter. And the committee recommend approval, and I so move.
Second?
Motion been made and seconded. Any discussion? All those in favor will say aye.
Aye.
All those opposed? Motion carries 7-0. The next item is a resolution to the Bellingham City Council calling on the Washington State Legislature to pass paid and sick leave law in 2016. We had a discussion this afternoon, and we had one amendment to the resolution. It's number 8, which reads, allow employees who have accumulated qualified paid sick leave time to use it on the first day of illness, first day of sick leave. And we had that in front of us this afternoon. The committee recommends approval, and I so move.
Second?
Motion been made and seconded. Any discussion? All those in favor will say aye. Aye. All those opposed?
No.
No. Who else said no? You, Jack, and, okay. Motion carries 5-2. I just, I'm not going to let it go. I want to just say this. I don't think anybody on this dais was ever convinced by one person or anybody from the Tea Party. I take offense to that. I'll speak for myself. I don't take orders from anybody. Nobody. No party, no person. Every issue that comes across this desk, I look at it and try to make the best decision for the city. And I want people to know that, because I think it's unfair for people to come here and demonizing people when they don't get their way on an issue. That really bothers me, and it's bothered me as years have gone on, and it continuously gets a little bit worse. And that's unfortunate, because everybody that works up here works very, very hard. Roxanne worked very hard bringing it forward. And there's a lot of times you bring things forward and they don't become law. Jack sat here one day for 9 hours with us, and he made 26 amendments. We passed one of them, and he still came back. And we still came back. But my point is this. This isn't political. And we don't hand things back up to the legislature. This needs to be passed statewide. It needs to be passed nationwide. And if, it really, I don't know, I'm not going to say any more other than to just say, this is our #1 priority, folks. We took this as our #1 priority, and then we're getting told not to pass it. Well, I think we should pass it, and we just did. and I think it's right for the community. It's right to send it to Olympia and let them see that one community at least is allowing themselves to stick their neck out and say, do this for everybody in the state, not just for one city. It needs to be done statewide. So anyway, that's enough of that.
Definitely enough.
Well, that's okay. I'm just saying, politics is getting so uncivil now, it's not good. Okay, we had one approval of minutes this evening. It's the 16th of November meeting minutes.
Move approval.
Second.
Motion been made and seconded. Any discussion? All those in favor will say aye. Aye. All those opposed, motion carries 7-0. Old or new business? Terry, you want to repeat what you said this afternoon? Or
I kind of said what I needed to say, but basically this afternoon I wanted to just express my support for the students and faculty at Western after the events that took place, the threats, the racist and hate threats that were done, and just express that there's no place for that in a society. We've got to all work together. This is a community of inclusion, and we need to support the victims of those kinds of hate threats, and we need to stand in solidarity with them and with our law enforcement when everything else against those kinds of actions. And we need to be speaking up always against those kinds of actions in this community and let people know that we are supportive of all kinds of diversity in this community and will be supportive of diversity in this community. And that's basically what I wanted to say. I wanted the students and faculty to know that we in this city are supportive of them and understand the fear that they have felt, and that we are here to help support them.
Okay, Jack.
I was going to bring this up this afternoon, but I was so moved by Terry's comments earlier today, I just decided I wanted just to leave it the way it was. But there are a couple things I wanted to bring up for tonight. One has to do with the fact that I guess I either wasn't paying attention or I just missed it or whatever, but the Public Works staff is working on a renewal and an update of the Climate Action Plan that was passed in 2007. And I'm hoping that it's, that the goals associated with it will be stronger than what we've had in the past. That, we've accomplished quite a bit, but there's a lot of things that I feel like we've been ignoring, and I would hope that a future council would adhere to the plan as much as possible. One thing that I brought up a couple months ago had to do with a drive-through over by McLeod, Trickle Creek area. And the fact that our Climate Action Plan calls for no idling of cars as a way of being able to reduce carbon. I read in the paper today that we've got 2 Starbucks going in that are drive-throughs that are continuing to just exasperate the problem. And I'm hoping that the council and the staff will look at the at the update and be able to really not treat it as shelf art as the way it seems to be over the last few years. There's a lot of very good things in it that need to happen, not just with the City of Bellingham infrastructure, but also as planning tools, land use planning tools, and other planning tools for Bellingham as a community that the council has direct input into. So I just wanted to make that as an overall statement. And the second is that I wanted to make a motion to amend the public comment time limit from 3 to 5 minutes for former council members.
Nice try. We might take it from 3 minutes to 1 minute if you don't want to.
All right.
I'll second.
No. Hey,
I withdraw my motion.
You have a one-way ticket to Hawaii, and I'm not joking. You do have a one-way ticket to Hawaii, don't you?
Well, I
say. So
Skype.
we might not see it. Okay. I'd like to have a one-way ticket to Lion Lake. Okay, anything else under old or new business? Okay, we will now go to executive session. Bear with me, I have to read a lot of things here. The first one is the city enforcement action. This executive session item was postponed. Labor negotiations. Staff provided information on negotiations regarding 5 separate collective bargaining agreements, including the following agreements that are presented for council action. The agreement between the city and AFSCME Local 114F for 2015-2017. I will now entertain a motion to ratify the agreement, which includes the following general terms. 2% increase January 1st, 2015, 3% increase January 1, 2016, 2% increase January 1, 2017, and a 0.5% increase on July 1st, 2017. Under benefits, the premium sharing contributions for 2015 shall remain the same as implemented on January 1st, 2015. In 2016, the employer contribution for health insurance premiums is capped at a 5% increase above the employer contribution for group health in 2015. The employer contribution for premiums in 2017 will be capped at 5% increase above the employer contribution in 2016. So I'll need a motion for that ratification.
I so move.
Second.
Motion been made and seconded. Any discussion? All those in favor will say aye.
Aye.
All those opposed, motion carries 7-0. The next agreement is between the city and Teamsters Local 231 for 2015-2017. I will now entertain a motion to ratify the agreement, which includes the following general terms. 2% increase January 1st, 2015, 3% increase January 1st, 2016, 2% increase January 1st, 2017, and a 0.5% increase on July 1st, 2017. The premium sharing contributions for 2015 shall remain the same as implemented on January 1st, 2015. In 2016, the employer contribution for health insurance premiums is capped at 5% increase above the employer contribution for group health in 2015. The employer contribution for premiums in 2017 shall be capped at a 5% increase above the employer contribution. So I'll need a motion for that.
So moved. Second.
Motion been made and seconded. Any discussion? All those in favor will say aye.
Aye.
All those opposed, motion carries 7-0. The last one is an agreement between the city and AFSCME Local 114L for 2015-2017. The council will entertain a motion to ratify the agreement, which includes the following: 2% January 1st, 2015, 2% January 1st, 2016, 2% January 1st, 2017, and 0.5% July 1st, 2017. Matching contribution effective July 1st, 2016. 114L will receive up to a 1.5 matching contribution in a 457 plan. The benefits sharing contributions for 2015 shall remain the same as implemented on January 1st, 2015. In 2016, the employer contribution for health insurance premiums is capped at 5% increase for the employer contribution for group health in 2015. The employer contribution for premiums in 2017 will be capped at 5% increase above the employer contribution in 2016. So I need a motion for that.
So moved.
Second.
Motion been made and seconded. Any discussion? All those in favor will say aye.
Aye.
All those opposed, motion carries 7-0. A big thank you to our negotiating team for a job well done. A long job well done. The last two items, potential litigation. Staff provided information on a potential litigation matter. Information only, no action was taken. Okay, staff provided information on a potential litigation matter involving properties located at 2315 Lynn Street and 2512 Lynn Street, Bellingham, Washington. I will now entertain a motion to authorize the legal department to file an abatement action to pursue demolition of these structures on these properties.
So moved.
Motion been made and seconded. Any discussion? All those in favor will say aye. Aye. All those opposed, motion carries 7-0. Mayor's report.
Thank you, Mr. President. I have some appointments, and that's all I'm going to share with you because we already did our jail update, so that was the other thing I was going to talk about. For your information, I am appointing Rhiannon Bardsley to the Bellingham-Whatcom County Commission for Domestic Violence. I'm reappointing Michael Reed to the Seaholm Hill Arboretum Board of Governors. I'm reappointing Ed Bennett to the Tourism Commission. And these are the ones that I need your approval for. I'm reappointing Rachel Myers to the Bellingham Public Library Board of Trustees.
So moved.
Second.
Motion been made and seconded. Any discussion? All those in favor will say aye.
Aye.
All those opposed, motion carries 7-0.
And then reappointing Tom Slocum and Jasmine Fast to the Greenways Advisory Committee.
So moved.
Second.
Motion been made and seconded. Any discussion? All those in favor will say aye.
Aye.
All those opposed, motion carries 7-0.
See you next Monday.
Next Monday, the finale. Okay, consent agenda.
Approval.
Second.
Motion been made and seconded. Any discussion? All those in favor will say aye.
Aye.
All those opposed, motion carries 7-0. Final consideration of ordinances.
Agenda Bill 20936, an ordinance amending the 2015-2016 adopted budget, increasing revenue in the Storm and Surface Water Fund by $44,702.35 for 2015 and $134,107.03 for 2016 as a result of a local source control agreement with the Department of Ecology and placing these amounts in the estimated ending unreserved balance in the Storm and Surface Water Fund.
Move third and final.
Second.
Motion been made and seconded. Any discussion? Roll call.
Gene Knutson?
Aye.
Michael Lillquist?
Aye.
Roxanne Murphy?
Aye.
Pinky Vargas?
Aye.
Jack Weiss?
Aye.
Terry Borneman?
Aye.
Dan Hamel?
Aye.
Ordinance passes 7-0. Agenda Bill 21049, an ordinance establishing an infill incentive program, reducing system development charges and permit fees for qualifying projects in targeted urban villages, and amending titles 14, 15, and 20 of the Bellingham Municipal Code.
Move third and final.
Second.
Motion been made and seconded. Any discussion? Roll call.
Michael Lillquist?
Aye.
Roxanne Murphy? Pinky Vargas?
Aye.
Jack Weiss?
Aye.
Terry Borneman?
Aye.
Dan Hamel?
Aye.
Gene Knutson?
Aye.
Ordinance passes 7-0. Agenda Bill 21050, an ordinance amending Chapter 6.04 of the Bellingham Municipal Code to establish a phased business and occupations tax credit to incentivize persons to open new businesses or new branch locations in targeted urban villages.
Move third and final.
Second.
Motion been made and seconded. Any discussion? Roll call.
Roxanne Murphy?
Aye.
Pinky Vargas?
Aye.
Jack Weiss?
Aye.
Terry Borneman?
Aye.
Dan Hamel?
Aye.
Gene Knutson?
Aye.
Michael Lillquist?
Aye.
Ordinance passes 7-0.
The next meeting of the Bellingham City Council or the roasting of Jack Weiss will be December 14th, 2015. Meeting adjourned.